We are here with Ruben Navarrete, syndicated columnist with the Washington Post Writers Group, and we want to know your opinion about the round of layoffs that happened a couple of days ago in the San Diego Union newspaper in San Diego.
Well, you know, I was for 5.5 years a member of the editorial board of the San Diego Union Tribune. I was the first Latino hired on the editorial board ever, and that was only in 2000. So before 2000, they never had a Latino on the editorial board. And I was the only one on the board for those 5.5 years, and now there are no Latinos on the editorial board with my departure. There are also no women or no minorities. There's 4 members of the editorial board, and they're all white males. That's the new editorial board for the San Diego Union Tribune in San Diego, California. People can draw their own conclusions from that about whether race may have been a factor in some of the layoffs. But you know, the facts speak for themselves in terms of who was left over. And of the 35 people who were let go in this latest round, something like 6 or 7 were Latino. We don't represent, that's about a good fifth of the 20% of the layoffs. We weren't 20% of the workforce. So it was a disproportionate share. There's also evidence of a reader survey that was done that amounted to a survey of older white readers who are core readers in San Diego. And they were concerned that we were covering Mexico too much, and that we were condoning illegal immigration because we were being unfair to the people of Arizona, that we were too critical of Arizona, and we should write stories that were more reflective of Arizona.
Do they tell you this to your face? I mean, do they say this openly?
Oh yeah, they say it openly. They say it in phone calls. They say it in readers that write emails to you. The general sense is that if you complain about something like the Arizona law, and you think it's unfair or discriminatory or unconstitutional, if you offer any criticism of that law, their view is that you support illegal immigration.
And the new editors are sharing this perspective.
There's been some reporting. Newsrooms are famously, as you know, a bad place to keep secrets because you have a lot of talkative people and a lot of nosy people in one place. And there have been some stories reported, shared, that the editor, Jeff Light, the editor of the newspaper, was the new editor, and he is concerned that we should maybe be looking at stories like the Arizona story from the point of view of the Arizonans. If in fact 70% of Arizonans support the law in Arizona that allows local police to enforce federal immigration law, and if 70% of the people in San Diego County support the law, it's his view that the way you grow a newspaper is to speak to those 70%. And my view is that journalism is not like that. We're not selling Pepsi Cola. You know, we're selling I've been doing this for 20 years, and our job is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. You take care of the people who are being hurt, and you make uncomfortable the people who don't care about this issue. And what we are learning, I think, in cities like San Diego is that there's a lot of people out there who don't want to be bothered by this issue.
And the interesting point for us, from the Mexican side point of view, is that people is very much happy with the coverage, but they are always complaining. They think that it's too to the other side exactly. The people of the Mexican, the people, the officials in the government and the state of Baja are complaining that they actually, some have accused the U.S. media to launch a campaign against Mexico. How come this? Understand that?
It's very much like the debate over the immigration issue. There are some people who think that that Obama is going too far, and some who think he isn't going far enough. And in Mexico, the view on the Mexican side, you're right, is that they are unfair in their coverage of Mexico. The coverage is not good enough. It's not complex enough. They would say that you only cover the violence, you cover the deaths and the bodies that are found.
The sexy stories, as we call it.
Yeah, and you give the impression that Tijuana is a very dangerous place. And in a city that's the size of Tijuana, that's not an accurate perception. You know, there are plenty of dangerous places and there are safe places as well. And that's the complaint on that side of the border. On the U.S. side of the border, among our older white readers, their view is that we spend too much time talking about Mexico, and that they don't care about those stories. The stories that we may do about what's happening in life on the Mexican side, drawing out the complexity of living in a place like Tijuana, that's not of an interest to our mostly white readers. Now here's the reason the newspapers are making a bad bargain. Those older white readers are going to die. Okay? They're going to die. It's the older white readers that newspapers are betting on are going to die, and they're going to be replaced demographically by young Latinos. And And the future of San Diego is not an 80-year-old white person. It's a 17-year-old Latina. And you either speak to that person, that younger person, or you don't. And the paper has decided to put its chips, to bet and put its chips on that older reader for as long as they can. And that would typically mean that when that older reader dies, the paper will die with it.
We were talking about the case of Sandra Diul was practically the only one left.
Right. There used to be a bureau. There used to be, as you know, a bureau. Now there was one person down
John Gibbons, Greg Rose, a lot of people covering for many years. But now, how can they cover Tijuana? How can they cover Mexico?
Yeah, as I said, I think the sense at the newspaper is that they want to cover Tijuana from the American point of view, from the San Diego point of view.
Is that healthy for the community, for the San Diego and Tijuana?
It's not healthy, but it's also not honest because it provides a one-dimensional view. When my family and I, my wife and our kids and I, we go down to Puerto Vallarta. When you go down to Puerto Vallarta, you can see a city like that, a beach resort in Mexico, one of two ways. You can see it as the people who are from Mexico see it, or you can see it as Americans see it, as a vacation spot and a way to get away. And as Americans, they look at Puerto Vallarta that way. What a lot of them, San Diegans, when they see Tijuana, they don't see it as a city that's vibrant, that has a university where they teach Chinese in addition to English and Spanish, or Spanish teaching English and Chinese, or where they have a motor company, or where they're making certain cars, or where they have a new plant, or where they're making microchips. They don't see that. They see a vacation spot. Like I mentioned with Puerto Vallarta, they see a place where you go down and have lobster dinner and then come back. And what they want to know is where are the safe places to go so that they're not a victim of the border violence. And so what the paper wants to do, I think, and what I've heard and decipher, is they want to continue to cover Tijuana, but to do it from the American point of view. So I wouldn't be surprised if they take Sandra Dibble and pull her out of Tijuana and bring her to the U.S. side, and say, okay, now you can write about the border, but write about it from here, looking that way. Don't write about it south looking north, write about it north looking south.
Is the union the only one doing this in the San Diego media? Because I don't see much of the other rivals. I mean, Amy Isaacson from KPBS was the only one, along with Sandra, coming across. But
correct.
Any more than that,
I know Amy very well, and she does a lot of good work. And she's across the border all the time. She covers it from this side, but she goes down there a lot. She does a good job with it. But other papers typically don't have the luxury of even covering Tijuana anymore. So it's unfortunate.
My last question. We are here in Denver in the convention of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. We are seeing that there's a somber mood because the shrinking budgets, the reducing positions for reporters or media workers. Is this part of the same in San Diego? I think it's part of the same phenomenon.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that it's a bad time for newspaper journalists all across the country. It is part of that same story, but the two stories are not incompatible. I mean, it's because of that contracting market that the editors are more scared than ever. And más antes, the editors would hear from angry readers, and the angry reader would say, "You need to drop Navarrete's column, or fire Ruben Navarrete, or I'm going to cancel my subscription." And más antes, the editor would say, "Then you can go, bye-bye, go cancel your subscription." And I think nowadays newspapers are in such bad shape financially that they're holding on to those readers much more carefully, and so they're being much more sensitive to the concerns of readers. I write about the immigration issue. I have for 20 years. I write about it in a very strong voice, fearlessly. And people know, and reading my column, as my wife says, you don't have any mistake at all about what you think of the Arizona law. There's not one person who could have written, I think I've written 20 columns on the Arizona law, and there's not one of them who could read one of my columns and not understand that I think this is a dreadful and horrible law. And so that's what you need. You need Latinos who will continue to speak with a nice, strong, soft, nice, strong, sharp, nuanced, intelligent voice.
Ruben Navarrete, syndicated columnist for the Washington Post Writers Group. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gracias.